Good stuff from Billy Napier there here on the Jordy Culotta Show. We appreciate you being out there and interacting with us. Remember, you can catch us at Culotta Show on social media. Make sure that you hit us there, follow us there, get in touch with us. If you have a question, jump inside of the bunker. Every week we've been talking to Josh Pate here on the Jordy Culotta Show. Excellent information. He's got the Late Kick Josh that airs Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 7 o'clock Central. Make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. As connected and as good as information as you'll find in college football right now. I think Pate's brand is as on fire as you can find as anybody covering the sport. So we welcome you back into the conversation here on the Jordy Culotta Show, driven and powered by Go Chevrolet. Thank you as always for the time. Good morning, man.
Dude, can you imagine being on such a level of living life that when someone asks you, hey, give me some of your favorite restaurants, your first answer is, well, my staff and I, first off, and I, we, I don't know how to tell you this, but we have a spreadsheet. I just sit there and say, I don't know, Taco Bell or something, I guess. I don't know.
He's a rock star.
Have you been to Lafayette? If you've been to Lafayette, you know the restaurant. I mean, it's a better selection than Baton Rouge, and ain't even close. What do you think is Napier of Napier? Is he a legitimate candidate for LSU?
Look, I think he is, but Billy Napier is the most conflicting name for me because I love Billy Napier. But I also have an idea about the LSU program, and it's not just LSU. I feel this way about the very, very top programs. It's always just been a personal preference of mine. If I were running those programs and I were making a hire, I feel that that is not a job I have to take any kind of risk on. In other words, let's say I prioritize organization, well, I definitely with LSU would prioritize organization, structure, but I would prioritize proven ability to do all those things. I don't know, man. I would not look at my job and say, I'm going to allow someone to prove it on my dime. Having said that, that's just me personally, because you can look at the University of Georgia, you can look at Ohio State, and you can look at Oklahoma just right now. And you can find places that don't feel the way I do, and they've taken that risk, and obviously it's paid off huge. Clemson, it paid off huge for them. Those are some of the biggest names in the sport right now. So as much as I say that, I also look and I say, if LSU were to go those routes and they rolled what I view as rolling a little bit of dice with Napier, it could pay off in terms of generational success. So yes, my short answer is I feel like he's in it. My longer answer is I wonder how Scott Woodward feels, and I just judge him by his history. I feel like maybe he thinks a little more in line with the way I just put it, but that also doesn't mean there may not be an exception to that rule.
Right, and I agree with that, but I guess my issue is who out there that has that type of experience, right? Who out there that would be outside of maybe Lincoln Riley, who else would you look at that says, okay, he has that experience and makes me feel comfortable to hire him because of everything you just said?
No, yeah, I think obviously that's a real world issue. Wouldn't go as far as to say it's a problem, but that's a real world issue. The second part to that is I don't know who's available. You know, right now, for instance, I think most people's tendency would be to look at the established names, both pro and college, at established jobs. And there are just some names out there, and I'm being very generic in the statement. There are names out there that I think we're going to get a little bit further into this process, and we realize, wow, I never even thought about that name because I just assumed that he was locked into that job because he's been there and they've done this and that. And I'm telling you, the one thing that I kept being told by the same person in the agent world that told me, hey, don't get attached to the USC job. No one's taking that thing because the LSU job's going to come open. That's what everyone's waiting on. Same person who told me that also said, look, there are going to be a lot of college names thrown around. Don't just assume college names are in the mix here. There are a lot of folks at the pro level who may or may not be the right person for the job, but there are a lot of folks at the pro level who believe that job is one of the 10 best in football, not just college football. And so you may have some fish biting at that line at the pro level even that would never even be on your radar. It's kind of like we've seen hires in the past where there have been 4 or 5 names thrown around. And then 48 hours before an announcement, all of a sudden there's this name totally out of left field. And you're saying, what? I'm not saying that's the way it will go with the LSU search. I'm saying it would not shock me if that's the way it unfolded with the LSU search.
One name that seems to have been constant since this job has opened up has been Mel Tucker at Michigan State. You are going to East Lansing this weekend. You have routinely, throughout the first couple of weeks of college football, been on the best campus or at the best game each Saturday. Do you believe you were at the best game this weekend with Michigan traveling in to Spartan Stadium to take on Michigan State?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do, because it's so multi-layered. I mean, first off, you got undefeated, and it's a rivalry game. It's in state and all that, and that's great, man. That's college football. But I'll tell you what else is what you just mentioned, and it's kind of unfortunate that sometimes you have to judge coaches this way. I'm not saying that it's kind of the same thing with Napier. I'm not sitting here telling you Mel Tucker wouldn't be a home run at LSU. The unfortunate part, especially with Tucker, is you've got a very, very limited track record as a head coach. Now, what that means, and this is the unfortunate part to me, what it means is there's probably going to be an inordinate premium placed on how he does over the next few games. And there are going to be possibly decisions made about how he would pan out over the next decade if he were your head coach, based on how, a few 3rd and 2s go in a couple of games coming up. And I don't know that that's always the best way, judging by how this sport works and the bounces of balls and the margins and whatnot, to judge a coach. But if you got the limited resume like Mel Tucker does as a head coach, then that may be the way that has to go. But there's also this entire other dynamic with that game. I call it the recalibration of expectation, and it happens this time of year. When you come into the season, everyone's got their own expectations for teams. And the Vegas over-under win total, for example, for Michigan was 8. They're already 7-0. Michigan State's was 4, and they're already exceeding it by 3 games. They're 7-0. But as you guys know, because you've seen this happen before, if you're undefeated this late in the year, people forget what they thought about you in the preseason. They redefine their expectations for you. And that's what's happening right now. So right now, it's shifting from good for us, we already exceeded what every preview magazine said we'd do, to I wonder if we can make the playoff. I wonder if we can make the Big Ten championship game. And people start changing expectations. And then if you don't make it there and you end up 9-3, it doesn't matter that you hit the over by 5 games or you hit the over by 2 games. People start saying, boy, we choked down the stretch. We really fumbled it. Shame on fill in the blank. In this case, Jim Harbaugh, Mel Tucker, whatever the case may be. So, yeah, saying all that to say, I do believe I'm at the best game this weekend.
Late Kick Josh with Josh Pate is live Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights, 7 o'clock Central on his YouTube station. You can find it there. He's from 247 Sports. And as we said, you hear there, he's routinely at the best college football games, and he's got as good information as you can find in the sport. Georgia, Florida do anything for you this weekend? Does it move the meter at all?
Yeah, I don't think it's the best game in the SEC, though, man. I think Ole Miss Auburn may top it in terms of watchability, but I think if you're trying to convince yourself that Florida's got a shot with this upset, you got to be telling yourself this. I mean, this has got to be your go-to. You got to be saying something along the lines of, well, Florida played the worst game they had last year against LSU too. And then they played the best game they played all year following that against Alabama. And so if that's the case and trends exist at all, it stands to reason, well, they just played the worst game they played this year again against LSU, so maybe their best will follow against Georgia. Here's the problem, if it's not already obvious. The problem is when you go back and you watch the Florida LSU game, what happened on the ground, it defies any kind of explanation. I cannot give you one. This week down there in Gainesville, a solid week and a half after the game happened, they're sniping back and forth. Players are putting it on coaches. Coaches are putting it on players. And so I don't even know where their locker room's at. I have no idea. Now, independent of that, I know Dan Mullen has this thing circled. I know it's a Super Bowl. What I'm excited to see is, even if Georgia wins that game, is there one thing or 2 things or 3 things that you can take away from it? If it's not 30-0, and instead, let's say it's 34-23 or something like that. Are there a few things you take away and you say, wow, Georgia did end up winning this game, but that defense didn't quite look as impenetrable as it has this year. There was that play in that series and this quarter that makes me think, well, if Florida did that, wonder what Bama would do. I wonder what Ohio State would do. And so sometimes even when a team wins, you see some cracks in the dam maybe because finally there's some water pressure applied to it that you didn't know existed before that end up manifesting themselves in a bigger way down the road against a better opponent.
Is Mullen's seat hot?
It's an entire weird dynamic because I don't know that his seat is hot in the traditional sense.
Right.
Like most of the time when we talk about this, we're saying, I wonder if he'll just outright be fired. Orgeron's seat was hot.
Yeah.
He ended up getting fired. The Mullen thing, like this time, I believe this started this time last year because I think this time last year, he was wrong, but I think he had convinced himself, I've got an NFL job somewhere waiting on me. And he acted that way. He acted like a senior in high school. He acted like he was on his way out the door and he could really do and say whatever he wanted to. Well, that wasn't the case. And then all of a sudden you find out, I got to retake 12th grade. I wonder if they'll let me back in. And that, I don't think that place really fully let him back in. His locker room, just in general, the fan base down there, the Florida beat writers have sung a different tune about Dan Mullen this year than they ever have. I don't think that place fully let him back in. And now I also don't know, as I say that, I don't know if he's going to be in a place where they're ready to just outright, cut the cord with him because they're looking over in Tallahassee. They're looking down in Coral Gables and saying, it looks like it's a little bit tougher out here on these streets to find a coach than maybe once it felt like it was. So I don't know if we want to put ourselves in that position. We got a good guy here. He just won the East last year. So I don't know how that works out. Maybe in some crazy alternate universe, there could be some mutual parting of ways that actually is mutual. I just don't, unless it just totally goes off the rails, I don't know that his seat is hot in the traditional sense like some people believe it is.
Make sure you are following our guy on Twitter at Late Kick Josh. Keep up with everything that's happening there on his YouTube channel. Say subscribe there. He's live Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday night at 7 o'clock Central. Last one, I'll get you out of here. Have you ever seen one school, one program throw one day at one recruit like Ole Miss did on Saturday to Arch Manning? They painted it for a day of Eli, but the Manning in the end zone should have just said Arch, right?
That's unbelievable. They had everything but an actual commercial airliner with a banner flying behind it. Because I've seen before, I've seen the little prop planes with the banner behind it. But they could have gotten at the very least a Cessna and put something behind it. That was an incredible spectacle. And if they don't get him, then whichever staff does get him, you just got to lean back and undo your tie and smoke a cigarette, even if you don't smoke on signing day. Because if you pull that off, after what Ole Miss threw, they threw a 109-mile-an-hour fastball under everyone's chin. So if you still pull this off after him, then that is the best testament to your recruiting operation as anything you will ever see.
You're the best, man. Thanks for the time. We'll talk next week.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right, man. There's Josh Pate checking in from Memphis this morning. He's over at Late Kick Josh.